This is Bladed Fury. We're on Xbox Series X taking a look at this game. It doesn't really have any fancy next-gen upgrades or anything like that, but it is actually a really gorgeous and aesthetically interesting 2D fighter slash a bit of a platformer game. I was pleasantly surprised by this one because I, wanted to check it out. I was like, okay, you know what, this might be interesting. It's got Chinese mythology as a basis for what this is, but it's also accompanied by traditional art style and sound design with a surrealistic sort of movement to it. And yeah, it's actually kind of really good. There are a number of difficulty options that are present for however bit of a challenge you want, and you're sort of using a system of health and combat in order to tackle enemies and make your way through the game. Now this is just opening right into a boss fight. There are something like 6 chapters in this one, and they actually provide a good amount of length to each of them. And you'll typically face off against a boss by the end of it, or at some point throughout the levels. And the bosses will actually give you a certain level of a new power that you can unleash upon later enemies as you continue through. And like I said, I was kind of, sort of iffy on this one. I was like, okay, we'll give it a whirl, we'll see how it is. And I was just very pleased by it, like surprisingly having a really fun time with it. I was engaged by it, and if you go to play this, the beginning of it is a little bit rough just in how it's set up, structure-wise, dialogue-wise. It's a little bit weird, it's all over the place. That's okay, that's fine. But once you get past that first point, it actually has a lot more of a cohesive setup to it, an interesting tale of this character kind of dealing with things beyond the realm, stuff like that. There's some afterlife things, and it makes a lot more sense, and it flows a lot better once you get out of that initial area. And on top of that, the game has these dynamic little things where you're kind of able to move around a map. So as you've been seeing on, like a few seconds ago on the map menu, there are varying lanes of where you can go. So I kind of compare it to maybe Dust and Elysian Tale, just in regards to the fact that you can kind of move through a level. Not entirely freely, it is very much something that is linear in design and scope, but there's, some extra type little small things that you can go off and do if you so choose to. And I think that's kind of cool, and it just adds a little bit of an extra balance to it. You're also improving your various skills, talents, and abilities. As you progress, you get you can buy more health vials you can use, or different combos that you can unleash to do more powerful attacks. Or when you send back projectiles, they're a little bit more hardcore on damage. Things like that, and you do that at these lampposts that you come across, which also save the game. And that's another place where you can adjust what your skill sets are as you continue to defeat bosses and unlock new special unleashing skills that you can use against your enemies. But like I was saying, the combat actually is quite flashy, it's fairly cool, it feels great to move through, and yeah, I kind of just really enjoyed what this one had to offer. Now, there can be a bit of an edge of difficulty to it. I do want to note that I am playing on easy here. I know that sounds terrible, but it was just like the suggested mode, so usually when they do that, that means that you should probably kind of do that because, the game is going to give you a good hardcore challenge. It makes me think like it's going to be some kind of Souls type thing. Now, that being said, I think you can go on normal here and have a fair balanced kind of combat, and if you want something really grueling, you can go all the way up to the harder difficulty. So I think that's kind of nice, and it feels pretty good to unleash these combos and moves and kind of deal with a variety of enemies. There's actually quite a number of foes that you take on across your journey, each area doing slightly different kind of designs, different enemies, and they all have different challenges to them in regards to how you do your attacks. So here's the skill menus, at least some of them. And, at a point, some of them have a yellow shield, so you need to do more hardcore hits and, things like that. And some might regenerate their shield while their health is, then protected. It's just got a lot of interesting kind of dynamics to the combat that you have to kind of sit there and learn and play through. And I think that's kind of well handled. And then if you haven't already noticed, I really like the art aesthetic of this game. It actually is quite lovely and gorgeous. It's simplistic and minimalistic, but at the same time, it's got such a unique look to it. You see the tombstones there, but in the far back, there's these cool puffy clouds, and in the foreground, you've got this really intensely detailed set of characters that are fighting, and then on top of that you've got like a level of particle effects as your character's sword kind of interacts with them, the little flames, and every area has like this cool aesthetic to it. And if you watch later on, there's a point where you're in this like multi-level area where there's like a puzzle element of how you get to different rooms, but you're kind of become a bit of a shadow in and out as you go behind these like blinders, and so do the enemies, and I think that is just kind of really gorgeous. And you know, I don't have any of the context in regards to like the mythology here. I have no idea what's going on, you know, with regards to what this is supposed to be connected to, but I got the gist of what the story was trying to say. I thought the character was kind of interesting. I like the dynamics of your core mission. I just really liked the journey of this one. I genuinely was surprised. I wasn't even sure if I was going to do like, you know, because I tested out a lot of different games to see, do I want to do like a video thing of this? Do I just want to do a written review? You know, what kind of content do I want to create for this one? And then I record a bit and I think about it. But for this one, I was like playing it and I was a little bit into it and I was like, huh, this is actually pretty good. I'm honestly having a pretty fun time with this. That is surprising because they don't all kind of capture my attention, these like, smaller indie type titles, but this one actually did. Even more so is weirder is, you know, like culturally it's something I don't necessarily fully get that someone else somewhere might. And to me, to be able to like have a good time playing this and understanding story elements, that rarely happens for this type of game. So I definitely appreciated that. And yeah, it's just kind of really cool to unleash these combos and these attacks that you are, you know, flinging off against foes as you move through the environment. It looks so cool, and it's so simple too. Like, it's not something where it's overly complex, where they're stuffing things into the game for you to do, where it's like, you could do your main mission, or you could trail off for, you know, 20 minutes on this level, finding some small thing as a collectible. It's not about that, it's about you actually working through the story. There's even a speedrunning achievement, which I wish I would have noticed because I would have put more of an effort into kind of moving through this faster. I was sort of, you know, partially taking my time and then also like taking a break while playing, you know, sometimes just to do some video editing, and I was like, oh, okay, yeah, well, there goes that one. But it's neat, you know, a good balance of enemies, a good balance of like some platforming elements. Sometimes you're just meeting interesting characters, like this guy here, he's going to give me a little bit of a boost. But, you know, it's got like a neat setup to it. It's got interesting dynamics for the gameplay. I think it's got a decent amount of gameplay for value in regards to what it provides. I mean, you could go through it decently fast, but I also think it'll give you a good chunk of time. And if you want the challenge, you can have that too. It's nice to have a 2D type game where I was legitimately just having fun using the various combinations to move through it, feeling a fair enough challenge while doing so, and then also just facing off against cool enemies. And there's weird enemies too, like, you know, these are just like skeleton things, and there's some ghostly things, but I was fighting like a cupboard at one point or something, and there's like these weird children things with like leg step up things, and yeah, it's really creepy. I wouldn't say it's ever necessarily grotesque. Well, there's like this spider thing, but you know what I mean. They've all got very much a kind of intense, unique art style and aesthetic to them that I just really enjoyed. Seriously, this was a complete surprise to me. There was a point where I was like requesting this, kind of like going, where you probably wouldn't have seen any footage of this one, but I was like, this is actually kind of worth showing off, because someone might find this and be like, oh, well, this is cool looking. And I sort of hope that that is the case with a lot of the content discovery that I focus on doing, is, you know, showing off different types of games. And this one's just kind of, you know, feels nice, fairly smooth. Yeah, it's got a good element of, like, you know, some puzzle stuff, some combat stuff. Oh, this part around here was what I was talking about earlier. It's just kind of like gorgeous. And this isn't even the area where you're kind of moving in front of and behind things. That's just the background. But like the layering in every single area, every frame of this game has like some kind of density to it. And it's just like a subtle sort of thing that you might not even notice as you're cutting people up. But if you stop and you take a second to look, it's got some really good detail to it, and I was just surprised. Anyways, that is Bladed Fury. I hope you enjoyed this look at this 2D action sort of fighting brawling game, and maybe found something a little bit interesting that you would want to check out, because I think this one is quite surprising. And I've added just a little bit extra gameplay so you see more combat and action to get more of an idea of how it's running. and some of the style of play that's present here, keeping in mind that these are a combination of different levels that you're seeing throughout this.